Hi, if you're new to my channel, hi, I'm Vicky V, and today we are going to be talking about pressure monsters and their identifications, their mechanics and stuff. As you can see on your screen, you can see me playing pressure in the background, and we'll have that for most of the video. Hopefully all of it. So what is pressure? Well, Pressure is an underwater Roblox horror game based off of Doors, Ultra Kill, SCP Containment Breach, and Iron Lung. It's very much a horror game, but there are some new accessibility toggles. One of these accessibility toggles is Deaf Mode. Deaf Mode gives you not only footstep indicators so you can check for one type of entity, it also gives you an aura for the entity we're about to talk about soon. Also, fair warning, none of this is scripted, so if I make mistakes, that's my fault. It's best if we start off with one of the most common entities in the game, the Angler. From the direct file in-game, it reads, "The Angler, Z-283, codename Angler, was originally found at the bottom of the Let Van Zone during the initial expedition and excavation for the Hadal Black Site." That is the first sentence right out of the gate. And in the addendum section, near the bottom of the second page, it says, "After the recent Black Site lockdown, 4 of what can only be described as Z-283 variants were spotted roaming the Black Site on the CCTV. There's a gray, pink, brown, and green variant, referred to as Z-283-Blitz, Z-283-Pinky, Z-283 Proger, and Z-283-Chainsmoker. The origin of these so-called variants are currently unknown. Further study needed once the Black Site lockdown has been dealt with. For now, operatives are advised to deal with them as they would with the original Z-283. The Angler is one of the most common enemies you can encounter in-game, and it actually mimics the mechanics of Rush from Doors. It will rush down the hall towards the next door, the correct one, if there are multiple doors in the same room, and it will instantly kill anyone upon touch. The second entire section of the file says Z-283 is incredibly fast, but is also partially blind. Because of this, Z-283 is constantly emitting an incredibly loud scream that it uses to echolocate through its surroundings. During the initial capture, operatives discovered that even if initial eye contact is made from afar, getting out of sight before it reaches your location will have it simply pass by you. Same thing can be said if the line of sight isn't broken before it reaches you, in which case its echo will bounce off you and it will move in for the kill. Like Rush, the Angler will mess up the light. However, the different variants have different light responses depending on which variant it is. The regular Angler will flicker the lights once, that's it. However, Blitz will flicker the lights twice and will come by very, very fast. Pinky will not flicker the lights at all, as she's apparently small enough that she doesn't flicker the lights at all. Probably, we're not entirely sure. Frogger acts more like Ambush from Doors. It flickers the lights and then will come by your locker or other hiding place twice. You have to wait for it to come back until it comes back a third time. After that, you're free to move forward. Chainsmoker is very, very, very slow and emits a toxin in a green gas form that will push you out of a locker if you go in far too early. This toxin activates your fear senses and will immediately push you out of the locker, raising your heartbeat until you're eventually pushed out. Much like how I think Jack does in Doors, where he'll just shove you out of a locker if you've been in there for too long. I think his name is Jack anyway. So that you should only hide from Chainsmoker if he's right next to your room. Now that we've covered the Anglers, it's now time to move on to the non-Angler variant, but similar to Angler entity, Pandemonium. The first section of the Pandemonium file reads, "Pandemonium, Z-367, codename Pandemonium, was originally discovered submerged near a thermal vent within the Let Van Zone during initial excavation of the Hadal Black Site. According to molecular data received from compositional analysis, Z-367's body is structurally similar to decomposing organic tissue and synthetic polymers, chemically alike to plastic with trace elements of various man-made metals. I'm not entirely sure if it's canon and I can't zoom in to check this thing properly. However, it said on the internet that pandemonium needs to constantly eat because it's constantly decomposing. It's practically a zombie, but it is still a living, breathing thing, apparently, somehow. Pandemonium is a very tricky entity to deal with because it has so many eyes that once it spots you, it will immediately locate itself to your location and just kill you. Canonically, pandemonium suffocates its victims until death and then proceeds to eat it. Partially eat it, because it needs to keep moving on top of needing to eat. There are 2 ways to survive pandemonium. You can either find a room or some place in another area without going into a locker that completely hides you. The other way is to survive its minigame. The minigame will only activate if you are in a locker, similar to how Figure's minigame only works if he gets close to your closet and you either just hopped in or you barely escaped him that way. However, rather than calming your heartbeat like how you do with Figure, Pandemonium is very, very, very aggressive. It will slam its body into the locker to try to get you out. It's literally slamming itself into the locker you're in order to eat you and get you. However, if you manage to keep your mouse or reticle in the circle that is given to you, you will make it just fine because Pandemonium is too impatient for food. Since it's reached a point in the game, I might as well talk about it. What you see there on screen currently is a turret, or better known as the internal defense system. The turrets originally don't attack Urban Shade operatives. However, these turrets are now currently under control of Painter, a sentient AI within a 90s computer. Every time you enter a room, you might either get a witty quip such as "Hope you're bulletproof, buddy," directly from Painter, and when you escape the room, he will either complain that you're boring or that he and Sebastian can't escape if you, the player, keep getting in their way. The next 2 entities I'll be talking about do not work together in tandem, but they are 2 different sides of Screech from Doors. The first is codenamed S-Q or Squiddles. They are essentially part of Screech because they spawn only in dark rooms. Sometimes there's a glitch where they might spawn in a light room if there's a small glitch with the angler or the lights or anything, but they usually spawn in completely dark rooms. The only way a squiddle is different from Screech is that if you look at a squiddle or flash your light on it for too long or get too close to it for too long, you will piss it off. It will attack you, taking a decent chunk of health. The only 2 light sources I know that don't piss off a squiddle are a flash beacon, which I just picked up on your screen, and the black light. The black light is like a blue light, but different because the lifespan of the black light, while decent, isn't best for multiple dark rooms at once. The lantern, because of its wide radius that I just picked up, it will absolutely piss a bunch of squiddles off. The other half of Screech, where, the part where you need to look at the thing, are wall dwellers. I hate these things and are part of the reason why I use Def Mode. Well, actually, the reason I use Def Mode. Wall dwellers sneak up on you and they get pretty fast doing it. Usually, however, if you're playing solo, you will be able to hear another set of footsteps with your own. But if you're playing with multiple people, someone might get killed. There are also environmental hazards you need to be wary of. There's hot steam, electrified water, pits, and I only died to 3 types, which are the 3 I just mentioned, and the other 2, I'm not entirely sure what they are entirely. I'll have to look at them later. Now it's the time for the explanation on the monster that is pretty much the exact opposite of the eyes from Doors. This opposite is called Eye Festation. Zeal himself, one of the developers of Pressure, headcanons that Infestation is a female bull shark. This bull shark was experimented on by Urban Shade. Due to multiple failed attempts at possibly enhancing this poor shark's eyesight, Infestation's entire body, well, more like her entire face, is covered with eyes, and a lot of them. Her entire inside body is also just eyes. Hundreds of thousands of eyes that spawn uncontrollably. Every time she shows up, which is usually at a window that she can swim up to, Infestation will try to get the player to look at her. The reason she's trying to get them to look at her is either to just kill them straight out or to just piss off Urban Shade. If she manages to get a player to look at her, she completely melts their brain with a ton of radiation straight from her eyes. Somehow, she can sometimes hypnotize the PA guy, the guy talking to you over the PA system, with something. I'm not entirely sure, but she can hypnotize him into using his voice to tell you to look at her eyes so that you can be free. This is really successful on Infestation's part because when some operatives or expendables see that their comrades are dying to Infestation, they suddenly realize to not trust the PA guy's voice. Well, only if Infestation is in the room or if another entity is behind a fake door. This other entity works in tandem with Painter, like similar to Sebastian, but instead of getting you to sell your data for items, it gets you to go to the wrong door and proceed to get bitten or slashed or something by an entity called the Good People. The Good People are an amalgamation of about 100 or so people, from researchers to expendables to possibly operatives, like armed operatives, that got meshed together in this mass of flesh and bone by an item called the Mask of Sadness, which is a very deceiving name since the smile and the mouth is upturned. Good People are easily recognizable in a room with 2 or more doors by doors sparking or possibly hearing breathing or unnatural sounds, well, partially natural sounds behind a door. And the doors that hold the Good People also have a smaller detection range of the player. So if you go to one of the doors and it doesn't open when you're not that far away, that means there's probably Good People. If you get attacked by the Good People, then you will lose about 55 points of your health. The next entity is more of an annoying one, but is still pretty scary. They are the void masses that occasionally spawn in lockers. Depending if you're playing solo or with more than one person, or even just with another person, is the difference between a game over and a just very unfortunate encounter. If you're playing a multiplayer and you get sucked into a locker by the void mass, another player can come and rescue you. The void locker will slowly digest you until you reach 0 HP, but if someone pulls you out before that happens, you will be fine. And they will get an achievement for it called Will to Live, which is getting another teammate out of a locker. However, if your locker is by a pit or electric water, or it's right next to hot steam, that could end up being a problem, as you may not die by the void mass, but you will die from environmental hazards. If you're playing solo and go into a locker with the void mass, I have learned the hard way that is an immediate game over. You can revive, I probably should have mentioned this earlier, you can revive with ferryman tokens, which I purchased at the beginning of the video. 1 ferryman token will give you 1 free revive. However, the game will force you to purchase the second revive, which is about 30 Robux. If you don't have the money, tough luck. You'll just have to start all over. You can usually detect a void mass in a locker by either purple eyes peeking through the vent holes or the sound of audible breathing within the locker. Okay, I have finally covered all of the random encounter, might encounter monsters, which finally, and there's infestation. And anyway, now to move on to the main thing, the main monster that is part of the very, very ending and the event in room 70 that we are coming up to in the video in about a couple of minutes. The searchlights are a massive entity that can only be encountered in the very finale and room 70, which is labeled the Grand Encounter. The searchlight has 4 massive spotlight-like eyes that, when spotting prey, it will then use one of the 6 hooks around its mouth on its underbelly to capture, then drag to its mouth. Getting spotted by this entity isn't a major problem, as some would assume, because if you get lucky, a lot of the generators you'll need to fix will be in the same area. If you are playing solo, this might be better or worse, because in slow solo play, you only need to repair 5 generators during the Grand Encounter. However, they could be scattered all across the area, so you need to make sure you don't get spotted, and you get them all fixed properly without dying to the electric shock the generator gives you if you fail. If you're playing multiplayer, you'll have to fix up to 9 generators, but since there are many more might be in one area, and then you only have to worry about a certain number being scattered around. The 3 most dangerous things about this Grand Encounter are from most dangerous to least dangerous. The most dangerous is the searchlight things themselves. We're not entirely sure what exactly they are. They could be fish, they could be whales, for all we know it could be a weird floating anemone. You never know, because I am too lazy to check the file, like I did for the angler and pandemonium. However, then the second thing is void mass. Because there are lockers you can hide in across the room that you can use to hide from the searchlight, the void mass puddles will be in there, depending on if you're very unlucky or not. The third dangerous thing that's something to still keep a lookout for is the generators themselves. If you get an input wrong, it will give you an electric shock and will take away 5 of your hit points. Now to move on the rarer things. There is a new entity that is completely harmless when recently added to the game for the Friendly Fire update. It is called the Imaginary Friend. To get the Imaginary Friend, you need to find a red toy remote. These remotes can be possibly in a random drawer that you can open, or it's in a room that is set up to be an observation chamber. Activating the remote gives you a 2-day free trial with your not-so-imaginary friend. This imaginary friend doesn't really affect gameplay. She doesn't really alert you to anything, but sometimes some of her voice lines will play just correctly, and she can save you from a pinky, a wall dweller, because sometimes she will whisper, "I can hear something coming, there's something behind you," the occasional things. Sometimes she'll just say like, "Hey, hello, how are you? Just checking in on you recently." Now, I'm finally going to talk about everyone's favorite fish, snake, whale, angler man, Sebastian. Don't worry, he's my favorite too. You can't expect me to sit my ADHD ass down while talking about a guy who's voiced by the same person who voiced To Be Damned from Madness Combat, okay? Yes, I know he also voices Gabriel from Ultra Kill, but shush! Sebastian is arguably one of the saddest characters in the entire game, because when he was arrested, he was convicted of 9 counts of murder, which he did not do. He was placed on death row when Urban Shade swept him up. They falsified his death record and then proceeded to use him as a guinea pig for testing. By the time Urban Shade found out that Sebastian was an innocent man, he had already gone through so many tests and bodily modifications that it was too late to turn back. Sebastian was also never told he was innocent. So it's probably why his file is worth 1,000 data. There are many heartbreaking headcanons about what happened to Sebastian's mom, brother, and sister, since he canonically is a middle child, and Sebastian was dubbed Z13 by Urban Shade operatives because of how many tests he'd gone through had completely altered his body. Sebastian is also canonically Chilean American, so that's a fun fact. That is all for now. I have 19 more minutes of footage, but it is good to stop here. I've talked about everything I wanted to talk about, and part 2 will be the rest of this gameplay alongside all of the achievements that you can get in Pressure. See you then!